Okay, so we've gone on to record. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our HART meeting. And it's really nice to be able to share some key updates with you at the start of this new academic year. So we recorded this session so that we could make sure that these were shared with you whilst many people today were unable to join us because of the Safeguarding Conference. So on today's agenda, we're going to have our usual update at the start, and we're pleased to have Pauline from Red Kite here that's joined us to be able to share with you updates from the Red Kite Skit and the Teaching School Hub work. Then we're really pleased to have Elaine with us, who's going to share with us some updates on the writing framework and the next sort of stages with developing writing that herself and Asquith School are moving through. Then we're going to have some reflections on what we know so far on Ofsted and the changes that have been coming through to us at the start of this academic year around the expected changes for November when the new framework is live and is in action. Then Don's going to talk us through some key principles about leadership that drives learning and linking very much with some CPD that we're going to be doing at the end of the month. We've also got a spotlight on the new DFE attendance reports, and then we'll be finishing with just thinking about governance and thinking around some of the key link governor roles that we should have established in our governing bodies to support the work that we do. So as I said at the start, we're really pleased to have Pauline here. So I'm going to hand over to Pauline now just to lead us through some slides from Red Kite and the Teaching Hub. So hi, Pauline.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Jo. First one, really important, it's trickled out over the summer, which is not great for getting messages out. There's only now one NPQ cohort in the autumn. So we've got a very tight window to ensure anybody that wants to do a NPQ this year gets onto that cohort. The funding is slightly different, but it's falling into an established pattern that if you are in the highest proportion of schools with pupil premium students, which does change annually, so do check that, and we have emailed those schools that are eligible, you will get full funding for any NPQ, specialist NPQs. For all other schools, it's fully funded for NPQ Senko and NPQ H. But all of this sits within now a scholarship pot from the DFE, and it's finite, and the places are obviously limited and are being allocated. This is not our rationale, it's the DFE rationale on a first come, first served basis. So that registration portal could close when that pot has been allocated. The QR code there will take you straight to our website. It's got a link to that and further information. I also just wanted to flag up as well, we were historically working with Teach First, and we went through a process of due diligence to review that to move to UCL alongside our ECF, and there's a few key changes that I just want to flag to schools. There's a very detailed implementation project from the outset. It's not part of the assessment, so you get out what you put into it, so to speak, but that is really what is being reported as one of the key impacts of this NPQ, and UCL are doing an evaluation of that, and there's some really good evidence around the impact in school because of that. The participant has an in-school mentor who is their line manager. This can be very light touch, or it can be really embedded and supportive if mentors want to use that framework, and they just help to support the implementation project and get as much out of that in school as possible. There's no application as before, it's just head teacher endorsement straight through the portal. There is more training, particularly around the NPQ Senko, but we made the decision to move to UCL because obviously NPQ Senko is also a mandatory qualification for Senkos. So there is additional national leadership conferences for Senkos, but it isn't mandatory. There's other ways of doing that online, but we just wanted to offer more training, particularly through that qualification, but obviously it's suitable for aspiring Senkos as well. So all the information's there, but just would really urge haste if you're thinking about a colleague doing an NPQ this academic year.
Thanks. Thank you.
And then just an update on mentoring both in ITT and ECF. So Vicky really wants to highlight that the ITT mentor training funding, there's been huge uptake on this in the past year. If you haven't already claimed that, and I think it's about £800, the deadline is this week. If you're unsure which portal to use for that particular funding, please contact Sally at the SCIT, who will help you. But it is this Friday, so please make sure you've claimed for your ITT mentor training. Similarly, we've now got the Early Career Teacher Programme, ECTP, which has got a 1-year mentor program in it. And these two mentor programs are becoming dovetailing into each other. And I'm working with this our SCIT to make sure that there is this coherent 1 to 3, because that's what it is, ITT ECF now. But for the new mentors in the ECF, or ECTP, it's only 1 year. It's the DFE have listened to schools on the challenges around mentoring, and basically that means 2 face-to-face sessions. So it's 1 day in September, which was last week, and there's a half day in June, and then they're fully trained. There's obviously reduced backfill funding on that as well, and I've just screenshot the latest. This has just been updated, so you can see there's much tighter tracking of this as well. So the majority of the funding is weighted towards the second training session, where they complete the full training. So just to be aware that that's reduced, and it's being much more rigorously tracked that they attend both sessions. If mentors have completed the ITT mentoring, there is less training on this that they are new ECTP that they have to do. They can self-certify that they've done that, and they don't need to do additional online training. But any questions about either of those mentoring, please contact us, and particularly the ITT. Make sure you've claimed that. Thank you. And then these are just some courses that are coming up that colleagues might be interested in. This has been run by the Lighthouse School. They did a free twilight last week around understanding autism, and this is a full day course that they are running, designed for all roles and phases. There's more information on the website. And then we're doing a fully online conference with Huntington Research School around building belonging, which is obviously one of these key concepts that's being used a lot to cover quite a lot of challenges in schools at the moment. We've got Johnny Utley's going to be speaking at that as a keynote, and we've got lots of workshop sessions. So there'll be a choice to attend. I think it's about 4 live on the day, but you get all of the recordings for all of the sessions to keep and use in school. And we've staggered it so that it's going to be from around 2 in the afternoon till just after school. So you can have colleagues who are perhaps teaching joining that as well. It's quite a flexible, sorry, it's 1:30. It's quite a flexible programme, and if you can't attend all of it. Sessions from Carr Manor, who are recognised nationally around this. Steve Farrington from Ambition's coming to speak. Huntington and Bradford Research School are doing the sessions. We've got Impact Ed, colleague from the Temple Learning Academy, which is a through school, is going to be talking about the work that they've done as well. So that's quite a timely programme and quite flexible. Thank you. Then we've also got this Master in Adaptive Teaching that I've been writing, and this has been sort of co-constructed with some schools around really what does adaptive teaching practice look like in the classroom. But I'll really want to flag as well, in addition to the 1-day course, we've developed a train the trainer model, which is really flexible. And I'm working with 3 schools that they're actually delivering this in school, picking the modules that suit their school needs best. So there's 2 models there that are available. But again, more information on the website. I think that's it for the courses that are coming up. Oh yeah, and just flagging up this at the end of November. It's going to have primary and secondary leaders talking about their leadership approaches to embedding trauma and attachment informed approaches in school. And it's being delivered in conjunction with the attachment research community. That's Andy Wright is the chair. It's a charity that works across England to support schools with these approaches, and that's just to flag that up at the end of November. And there is lots more. That was just a kind of highlights of what's going on at the minute, but it's all on the website. So I think that's it. Thanks
Yeah,
very much.
that's everything, Pauline. Thank you so much for that. And as ever, people can make contact with you, can't they, through the usual route if they need to. So thanks ever so much, Pauline. That was really useful. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we move on to the first part of our sessions then during this meeting. And we're going to look first of all at the writing framework. So this was dropped on us or came in quite late as we were expecting it to be late. It did arrive just probably a couple of weeks, didn't it, before the end of term, but still quite late for us all to digest and to have the time to really look at it. Although I guess the summer holidays may have provided some people with that opportunity. So we know that it's a useful document. It's had mixed reviews in social media, and if you've had a chance to look at it, what you'll see within it is that it does set out clear sort of evidence-informed approach to teaching writing from reception to year 6. And I think what we recognise from HART is how much it emphasises the foundational skills, the fluency, and that coherence of a systematic curriculum, because that's something that over the last few years, we've really focused on, and particularly that building of those key transcriptional skills from the early years and ensuring that that progression is really clear, building on that. So when we've looked into it and we've drawn from it the key principles, that very much is what we've just highlighted here on the screen. So we know it's foundations first. It's, as I said just then, it's about sort of beginning in the early years, thinking about it as that through journey from the moment that children enter the setting, and that really strong focus on motor skills, the pencil grip and oral composition. So making sure that handwriting, spelling are explicitly taught from reception, so that we get that automaticity. We know the power of that automaticity because it then frees up children's working memory for the composition and for the oral composition. Sequenced and structured teaching, so that links very much to the progression. So it should be taught in a sequenced way, managing very carefully cognitive load and avoiding overloading pupils. So all of those principles of cognitive science that we've studied and shared over the years. So that really comes through strongly in the writing framework. And one that we've talked about before, but it comes out really strongly too, is that children shouldn't be expected to write at length before they've mastered those foundational skills. There's also the real focus on sentence mastery and grammar, so that all writing is built from sentences. Teaching sentence construction is essential, and grammar and punctuation should be taught as tools for meaning making, not in isolation. So that's strong link, and from all of her work, Elaine's going to share a lot more focus on that in a few moments. Spoken language is a foundation, so we know that speaking and listening underpin writing development, and pupils should be encouraged to compose orally, especially while transcription skills are still developing. And we've discussed in the past about that oral composition being the key during reception and into year 1. And then thinking more carefully about the right time, not feeling the pressure to be writing pieces for end of year 2 assessments, but to ensure that that oral composition continues for as long as necessary until children have those basic transcription skills really embedded. So making sure that that oral composition runs alongside that is paramount. Accuracy and fluency, so dictation comes out strongly as well, being a very valuable strategy for fluency and accuracy, because also what that enables, if that's well crafted and aligned very carefully to children's phonic abilities in those early years, it avoids children embedding errors And we know very strongly that early habits really matter. So we're helping children to get into good habits. So they're practicing the right things and they're practicing for accuracy alongside that fluency. Writing across the curriculum, so making sure that that writing isn't just in English work, but we're also thinking about those high expectations in all subjects. And alongside that, the importance of seeing the writing for audience and purpose. Inclusive and responsive teaching. So teachers must identify barriers early and break learning into small, manageable steps for pupils who need support. And we know that through the new inspection framework, inclusion is front and centre of that. And that's going to be something that it aligns very closely with the writing framework is around, as we've talked for a long time about small manageable steps, making sure that we are breaking those barriers down for all pupils so that we don't just plough ahead with one lesson fits all, that it's adaptive and responsive teaching that's meeting every child's needs in the classroom. High quality teaching and ambitious expectations, therefore, are essential for all learners. And then finally, here it's around leadership and culture. So leaders must create a positive writing culture. And I know that we would recognise that that's something that we all endeavour to do. But if we're going to do that effectively, what the research is saying is that we've got to ensure curriculum coherence and avoid the disconnects between reading and writing, and particularly around the leadership of those two aspects. So making sure that if you do have two leaders, a separate reading and a writing leader, that they are working together very closely on the same page so that those two aspects of English are connected and not disconnected, and you haven't got differing views leading both of those key areas. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask Elaine to come online and to talk to us about. Elaine has done a lot of thinking about this and has sort of really gone through the writing framework and has done a lot of thinking about what this document means for her school's next steps and her thinking around that. We're going to ask Elaine just to share with us now and her interpretation of everything that she's read in that writing framework. So hi, Elaine.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Thanks very much. So basically, reading through it, I spent a bit of time reading through it, and there's a lot of material there, isn't there? So condensing what we felt was our next steps, bearing in mind we've done a lot of work this year on oracy, and there's a significant part of it that's around oral rehearsal, dictation, all of that sort of stuff. So that was really interesting to read, certainly from the point of view of building children's understanding of sentence construction, moving through into longer composition. And that's where we feel as a school we really want to target children's understanding this year, because whilst we had been doing work on sentence construction, word level, sentence level work, we certainly haven't underpinned it with a deeper understanding of children's knowledge of cohesion and that progression in cohesion from reception all the way up to year 6. So from the actual framework, the key areas, the 5 key areas that we picked out as being significant for us in building this understanding right throughout the school, and threading alongside it is the oral composition. So the first one, and some of these obviously have come from what Joe has just said, so there'll be a little bit of repetition here, but I think it's really important to stress the point. First of all, sentence construction. Treat that early and explicitly. So it starts from reception, and yes, it's oral, but what does that look like? So we're thinking about that. What does oral construction look like? What can cohesion look like when children are composing sentences orally in the early years? Then moving the oral rehearsal and dictation on through the school. What does that look like from reception all the way up until year 6? How are we helping children to rehearse sentences and phrases orally, which is then helping them to plan their writing? how does dictation fit into that? Is that being explicitly encouraged at word level, sentence level? And then as you go further up the school, is it looking at how children are joining sentences, how those sentences are then becoming coherent within a short paragraph, for example? And that became really important from reading through the framework, because what it then helped us to really understand is that for children to become better writers, we need to reduce the cognitive load that they are starting that piece of writing with. So if they've had an opportunity to orally rehearse their sentences and orally rehearse their understanding of what cohesion is, so as a year 6 teacher, do my year 5 children know and are they secure with the cohesion that they should have been taught in year 5, you know, tense, clauses, all that sort of stuff. So before we do anything, is that secure? So that the cognitive load isn't too heavy before they even begin. So that's been something that's been really important. But then the meat of it has been that how do we encourage that gradual progression from sentence level work to paragraph writing through the school? So we know, as Jo has just said, we can't expect children to write long, lengthy pieces of writing before they're ready, because if their sentence level skills aren't sufficiently secure, then the writing isn't going to be the quality that they should ultimately be able to produce, certainly by the time they leave year 6. So it's that focus on what do well-constructed sentences look like, orally, starting in reception, but working its way through the school. What do those well-constructed sentences look like in year 6? What does that then look like moving into to longer compositions? From that, we then had to think, right, what is our understanding of cohesion? Do we have a progression in cohesion throughout the school? The national curriculum gives us a progression, but it's not, you can't just open up a page and you can see that actually cohesion in reception is this, cohesion in year 6 is this. You can find it, it's in there, but in order to make it really simple, we thought, right, let's see if we can create some sort of a progression document that shows us what are we looking at as far as cohesion throughout the school, and that's the document that I've that's just on the screen there. So I'm not going to go through it all, but for example, in reception, the areas we would be looking at would be, right, joining ideas orally. For example, use and to connect ideas in talk, use simple time words, then in all stories, use pronouns in talk, use he, she, it to talk about people and objects, sequence events orally, you know, tell simple stories or routines in order, and begin to talk about events using appropriate tense, past and present forms. So that's the start of children understanding that their oral composition is coherent. By year 6, if we have a look at year 6, the actual stage of cohesion for them would be connect sentences within a paragraph. So using repeated ideas. Across paragraph cohesion, which would be using your discourse markers, furthermore, in addition, also, excuse me, that sort of thing. Signal changes across full text and summarize using thematic links. So again, picking up on what Jo was saying, this sort of writing is across the curriculum. It's not just in English. It's showing that that this cohesion is strong across the curriculum whenever they're writing. And finally, deliberate and accurate manipulation of tense, using flashback, dialogue in present versus narrative in past, and switching tense for impact. So what we realized was that there is that they're not altogether exactly the same from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 2, EYFS Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, but there are these themes that cross over from the beginning all the way through to year 6, and you can see tenses there as well, pronouns, you know, synonyms to refer back, that you move that further up into year 5, but pronouns, you know, all of these strategies that can make a piece of writing coherent, we teach them. But the children, certainly here, we were not teaching the children that these were very valuable or are very valuable elements that should be in their writing from work that they've done in the previous year before we move on to new cohesive elements that should be in the writing. And that, so once we've got that, then hopefully what we're then teaching the children is that they can then take that knowledge and build within paragraphs cohesion and across paragraphs cohesion. And obviously, in order for them to do that, there's got to be lots and lots of practice, lots of working through the books. We've changed how we use our, we call it an everything book, but you know, when they're doing their English work, it's a work book. So yes, the handwriting, there's expectations on handwriting, but when they are working it out, they're doing it in you know, they're practice. They're working it out. You can look at it and you think, this feels like a combination of the old jotter within there. It's neat, there's an expectation, but when they're working it out, again, we've got to think about their cognitive load. We're not expecting them to be sitting there thinking about their handwriting, their spelling, punctuation, all of that. They're practicing it all, and then they have their best effort at it. And so far, we found that that's worked really well. But we did do a good couple of weeks of recap on cohesion from the previous year and what that means for their writing. Yeah. Does that make sense, Jo?
It certainly does. And I think that's just really valuable insight, Elaine, for us all to sort of consider, isn't it, when we reflect it already, have we potentially rushed on too quickly with our writing curriculum at the start of this new academic year and just got going with New Year's content for all of the children and perhaps not really taken that opportunity to reflect and to think, actually, have they got what they need, the tools they need to really be in the best position to write as effectively as they can this academic year. So lots of really sort of valuable insights into your thinking there, Elaine. And you're going to support us with the CPD on the 14th of October, which is that writing progression and the systematic approach. And in that session, we hope to be able to sort of see more examples and to sort of see more of this in action as well, and look at the progress that the children are making in these early stages of really thinking more closely around the cohesion element as well. Yeah, thank you, Don. I don't know, any thoughts or reflections from yourself? Just sort of knowing the changes and hearing Elaine.
Just how clear it was in the steps that are built, and particularly the that workbooks, the approach with the workbooks, I can see that's going to be very helpful, because it's really it's not just books that are there on show, it's showing you all the processes that the children have gone through.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elaine. And as I say, we've got the writing session. So if colleagues haven't booked onto that and are interested to hear more of the journey and more of the thoughts from HART team and what we're sort of picking up about changes and how curriculums need to sort of develop further, particularly, I know we've talked to Elaine around the genres, and you've stripped back the sort of the books and the texts and the thought thinking around that as well, so not to overload and make that writing more purposeful and accessible for children as well, with the context, etc. as well. So we'll be sharing more of that at that session in October. Okay, thank you so much, Elaine. It's great having you on today, so thank you. Okay, we'll move on to thinking about Ofsted. So there's been a lot that's come out, and today we're not going to spend too long on this, but just wanted to give you some of those headlines and share with you what we know so far. So just as many of you will have been online perhaps and have listened to some of Ofsted's webinars, and they're available on their YouTube channel for everybody to explore and listen to with the feedback. Ofsted are doing a massive piece of work on communicating the changes and sharing those with everybody. Part of the transparency, and Sir Martin Oliver is definitely wanting to eradicate some of the kind of strong feelings against Ofsted and try and make it feel like this inspection is going to be different. So we wait to see what it actually feels like in reality. But at the moment, we're being presented with a story which is very much that this is going to feel different. So there are 6 key areas on here with updates, and I think I'm not going to read through them all because they're in your workbook and they're really clear. I think most people will have heard of most of these changes. Just a couple of things to highlight though. So just in terms of inspections and timings, still going to remain being notified on a Monday, with general inspections just taking place on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. There will still be inspections on the other days, but those will be more of the urgent inspections. But the general inspection will now be as it has been, as it was trials in the last couple of terms of the last academic year. The interesting thing here on timings, though, is inspections must now finish by 5 p.m., which I think is a really important decision that's been taken, because the days when the inspectors are in can feel incredibly long, particularly when colleagues have all rallied round the night before as well and have probably had a long evening preparing for the inspection on the Monday night before. So to see the inspections team leaving by 5 o'clock, I think is an exceedingly welcome move. We know that the evaluation areas, there are more of them, and for primary schools there's generally going to be 7, because the 8th one would be for post 16. So with early years included, there's going to be 7 evaluation areas. And good to see that adjustments were made there, because we heard through all of the consultation that there was potentially going to be 10 areas. So really good to hear that they've responded and they've amalgamated curriculum and teaching and attendance and behaviour. So that was a welcome move. What we do know is there are, Ofsted are almost describing it as 2 bookends of inspection, 2 key areas that are going to be threaded through everything. So we see inclusion having its own evaluation area and really becoming front and centre of this new inspection framework. And alongside that, threaded through, is leadership. So leadership increases its significance as well. So together, inclusion and leadership threaded through all areas in all conversations. And of course, there's a lot of material that's been shared. We've got the Ofsted toolkit, which no doubt everybody will have had the opportunity to have a look through, maybe getting to grips with that. And what we recognise from that, which is particularly helpful for many of our HART members, is the inclusion of specific notes around small schools. So with the rollout at the moment, with all of the pilot inspections, we hear the message that Ofsted are having a steady and assured start. So as part of that, they are making sure that they fulfill lots of pilot inspections in all types of schools. And we know that there are many happening in small primary schools as well, so that the adjustment of what this schedule looks like for small schools is really clear too. And that assurance is an interesting point as well. So in terms of as I say, the current pilots, and also going through into the sort of 3-week window from the middle of November to the first week in December, when the new schedule will start, we know that in those, all inspections are going to be led by HMI, but HMI are having to be signed off by senior HMI who have been already signed off by the assistant regional directors. So there's a tiered approach to signing off the HMI workforce. So all of those inspections up until Christmas will only be conducted by HMI. And we know going forward that all inspections will be led by HMI. There may be some occasions when they're not, but they will be very experienced, long-standing OIs who have worked perhaps as HMIs in the past. But the majority of inspections will be led by HMI. Okay, Don, any of your thoughts, anything I haven't covered there that you might just want to add in, or that pretty much cover it?
No, it's the first time it's had such a tiered steps towards the actual new framework.
Yeah,
there really seems to be that as much more time has gone into making sure this is introduced in the right way without any obvious mistakes that they haven't spotted.
Yeah. And I think that what we hear and what we hope for, but what we hear is that that's very much about consistency and trying to iron out the variability that we felt in the past potentially as well. So, like again, proof will be in the pudding, won't it? So we'll see how it goes. So we talked about, and I mentioned at the beginning, through all of this consultation, we're being told that there's going to be a shift in how this feels for schools. And as I say, Sir Martin Oliver is very vocal about that, and that schools should feel that shift. So the shift in culture, inspections are going to be more dialogue driven. We are expecting to see less recording of evidence by inspectors and more time for them listening, talking and reflecting, and ensuring that what they record is agreed by leaders who they are talking to. So much more dialogue between inspectors and senior leaders in school. And the tone is intended to be respectful, empathetic, and collaborative. And that again is a key sort of part of that culture shift that we hear coming through. And we already picked up at the end of the summer term that we were going to see more focus areas being the significant pieces of work that happen instead of deep dives. And focus areas will be discussed in those planning calls, and will probably include a combination of different aspects of the framework that we were familiar with in the last framework. So obviously we'll be focusing on curriculum and quality in education, but will maybe be woven through around personal development, behaviour and attendance, and inclusion and safeguarding too. So much more of areas that are unpicked. And we also know that as part of that areas, there's going to be a greater focus on case sampling of small group of children, the more vulnerable children, and throughout the inspection activities, the inspectors will be seeing how work has been adapted to meet the needs, how barriers have been broken down for those children so that they're thriving academically and socially as well. And I'll be able to share more information around that as we go forward with HART. And we have a special session that's happening towards the end of October, which I'll highlight in a moment. Those focused areas, importantly, on that telephone conversation are going to be tailored more around the school's context and improvement journey. And what we hope to be able to do for our HART members as we go forward is give you some advice and guidance around tailoring those improvement areas and confidence when you're having those discussions with inspectors around how you might get the best for your school that's aligned to your improvement journey. And just finally from this sort of Ofsted section, so Ofsted are talking more about guiding principles, and I've pulled this slide together. This is something I've just pulled together, which has kind of got they've got three guiding principles when they're coming into inspection. And we're going to just look at this first one in the middle first. So as I said before, around leadership, inclusion and safeguarding, they're going to have a much stronger emphasis in this new schedule. So it's going to be a real central force as leadership seen as for that school improvement. So are leaders taking the right actions? Are they creating systems and cultures that support continuous improvement, that effective teaching and ensure that pupil well-being is as strong as possible? So it's not just leadership isn't just evaluated in terms of strategic oversight, but it's also in how it supports staff development, workload management and inclusive practice. So it's really woven into everything. I've already mentioned about inclusion being at the heart of inspection, and as we see, it's got that standalone evaluation area. So that really does reflect its elevated importance. And inspectors will be looking more closely through that case sampling around pupils with SEND, pupils known to social care, disadvantaged pupils, so those in receipt of pupil premium, and then also, dependent on your context, pupils who face other barriers to their learning, and they could be really context driven, because that could be different from school to school. So it's quite a broad category, is that one, and that will come out through that phone conversation when you talk about the nature of your pupils and your context. So it's and the reason for that area is because obviously what we know is that this framework explicitly states that Ofsted's mission is to raise standards and improve lives for all, with that particular focus on those who face barriers to learning and well-being. So they've got three core themes, and three core themes that are going to guide the inspections are achievement. So it's achieve, belong, and thrive. And I'm sure that you'll have heard those three themes mentioned if you've watched any of the webinars. And those three themes are really going to be explored through the learning walks. And learning walks will be the first activities that will happen on day one. And they'll be explored not just through what inspectors are seeing, but also through that professional dialogue. So they'll be gathering the evidence all together around shaping of that sort of leadership and inclusion together. And then the final principle is that the starting point for inspections in all schools will be that expected standard. And we've heard a lot, or I've listened on the webinars that I've been on, it's come across a lot around coming in expecting that schools are working at that expected standard, and those standards very much thinking about teacher standards as well. So everything that we know that's identified on the teacher standards, are schools meeting those? And we haven't heard that tight link with the teacher standards before, so that feels new, doesn't it, in this framework as well. So when you dip into the toolkit, make sure, have a look at that expected standard. That's everybody's starting point. So finally, just for this section at the bottom, I've highlighted the CPD that we're going to do a full session on this. And I'd really recommend this for staff teams to attend as well, because we're really going to unpick with some more knowledge that hopefully we will have gained by that point, by the 23rd of October. And actually, what does this look like in practice, and what do teachers need to know? I think it would make a really good staff meeting. So it might be something that you want to highlight and have all of your team of staff watching, and really give that update to everybody, with perhaps an opportunity, if time allows, for us to take questions as well to help support staff having more confidence and knowledge going into the second half term where inspections will start. Okay, Don, anything to share? Anything else from you at that point around at Ofsted?
No, I think everything's been covered, Jo.
Is that okay? All right, so we'll move on to your session and update for us here, Don, on leadership that drives learning. So again, linking to CPD that we've got going on in a week or so's time.
Yeah, so leadership that drives learning, as has come across in today's session, there's been a lot of changes in the last few years of curriculum, the sort of the learning that's behind, that is supported by research that's behind it. So there has been a lot of change, and it seems a time really where we need to make sure that that is the learning that goes on is really going more monitoring to be taken by schools, and more consistency in their monitoring. So this particular CPD will look at that. So it will look around what is the best types of monitoring, what are the effective monitoring that's out there. It will also be trying to see about some of the things that have been mentioned in today's session about the way that schools have the time for their monitoring and how they can focus. And we will have examples there to show some of this work that is going on. The workbooks that were mentioned by Elaine, that is probably going to be looked at in detail, of how examples of it, of how that could help schools with their monitoring to look more closely at the books. And so the monitoring isn't all about going into lessons. We've got to link it up with what the children's learning is being the steps, the small steps that have been mentioned today, looking at all of those aspects. And we're going to provide in this session examples of the sort of monitoring that will drive learning that's going on in schools, and share that with you. So that's on the 30th of September, and there will be, you know, an opportunity for you to see those sort of approaches, how they're working, and hopefully there'll be something you can take back to adapt some of the work you're already doing in school.
Great. Thanks, Don. And I think, just like you've said, so much of that, just sort of looking at the bullet points on the slide, just links with everything we're saying, doesn't it, around small steps, ensuring that's in place, this great focus on leadership and inclusion. So how we can make sure that it is driving the learning and breaking the barriers down for everybody so that all children thrive and succeed. So great stuff. Thank you. That's great. So moving on to our next session, this one's around the DFE attendance reports. And I know I shared and started to talk about these attendance reports in the last session, but I really want to highlight them and ensure that you are accessing them, because they're really useful and powerful tools to support the work that we're doing in school, and also to save time. So many schools I've spoken to leaders haven't actually got on to their View My Education data and to download these documents. So there are now 2. And at the start of September, I think it was in the second week of term, the 8th of September, from that date, all schools should have available on their View Your Education data site from the DFE, should be able to find these 2 reports. Obviously not the ones that say Yorkshire Collaborative Academy Trust, those are the ones I have access to. But what you'll see is your school, where that title is, and it will say your attendance summary report, and there'll also be a similar schools comparison report. And whilst this says at the bottom, summer term 2024 to 2025, that's when it was pulled together. What these reports actually do is give you oversight of your attendance data for the whole of last year. So it's the summer term one, but it actually doesn't just cover summer term data, it covers the whole of last academic year. So they are really, really useful. And if you're like me, you'll enjoy reading them if you haven't already. So what I've posted just on the front in the middle of these 2 reports is looking forward, thinking about the toolkit, what is Ofsted saying around attendance, and for that expected standard, which we know is one of their guiding pillars, their guiding principles. This is what it highlights for attendance. So it's saying leaders analyse attendance information closely at whole school level and for different groups. They use this to analyse well, to identify the causes of poor attendance, intervene early and remove barriers. Overall attendance is broadly in line with national averages or shows an improving trend over time. And attendance is improving, including the attendance of pupils who are persistently severely absent and individuals or groups that leaders have focused on. So keywords for me in there are analyse attendance information closely at different group levels, and that we are using that to identify reasons for poor attendance. And the 2 reports that you have sat on that database will help you to do that without having to do too much onerous looking at your data, because it will highlight the key areas of success in your school and the key areas that you could help you identify for improvement. So they are, are really a good, strong starting point. And what I notice from when I'm reading these things is I'm seeing things on these reports that perhaps I haven't thought about before, and that is breaking it down to days of the week and also sessions of the week. So it gives you the opportunity to have a really good look at what happens in our school on a Monday, or what happens in our school on a Wednesday afternoon. Why is that the afternoon when we've got lowest attendance, for example? So it's really prompting lots of really thought-provoking conversations. And where I've seen these reports used well already, leaders have had that dialogue with their staff teams and said, look what it says about us. Why do we think that might be? And through that good discussion and analysis, it may have come out, Wednesday afternoon, that's when we have X, Y, or Z happening, and perhaps some of the children are not enjoying that as much as they may be, which may be a reason why we have lower attendance on that day. So the two different reports offer slightly different things, as you'd expect, and if you've had a chance to look and you've downloaded these, you'll have noticed already. So you get your standard national report, which compares you to national. So that helps you very much to identify, doesn't it, where your school percentages are, have you got that improving? And there are lots of really useful charts and tables in there, which ensure that these reports are accessible to all, which is why they're a really good tool to send out to your governors, because they help governors to see and to have good oversight of all of the different aspects of attendance, because they break down into free school meals and send, as well as each year group. So really good to look at the national one. And then, of course, the school comparable schools report, which is benchmarking your school's attendance against 20 other schools with similar characteristics. So if you're part of a trust, it isn't comparing you necessarily with the other schools in the trust. It gives it that broader national view. So 20 other schools that have that same profile as you. And that means that this report's really powerful, particularly for governors, and also for setting perhaps key performance indicators. If you need to put attendance on your school improvement plan to be able to improve and to be ranked higher against your 20 of the schools, could be, the small steps and how you demonstrate that your targeted improvements, or your targeted strategies are actually giving improvements and having an impact. So can be used very, very powerfully to help support identifying those next steps and areas to particularly drill down and focus on. So what I've shared a lot before in the past is keeping that sharp focus on persistent absenteeism, and we've shared our persistent absentee trackers, which hopefully schools have set up at the start of this academic year, highlighting the children who have been previously persistent absent and making sure that we're monitoring those children closely so that they don't fall into patterns at this early start of the new academic year. And we heard a lot of information in the press, didn't we? The weekend before we all came back to school, there was the national, I think it was on the BBC News, was very much around children who have a day of absence or have absence in that first week of the September term. It can be indicative that they will go on to have persistent absenteeism by the end of the year. So having those trackers set up, obviously it's a little bit too early, to be really looking at the new data and percentages of attendance as meaningful at the moment, because if a child unfortunately has had an illness, they may only be showing already that they've had 75% attendance, which may not fit their usual profile. But taking and thinking at those key checkpoints that we're going to look at each half term and starting to think, are we seeing any of those traits that we've seen before? Those PA attendance trackers are really useful for stopping and really looking closely. And alongside that, when we look at the Ofsted toolkit and what it's saying for the strong standard, so moving and looking at the what next, these are the key things it says about attendance for the strong standard. So tailored and responsive, reasonable adjustments and adaptations or interventions to support pupils who need help to improve their behaviour have a demonstrable impact. So looking at the PA trackers, that can help to show that impact as well. If a child that was PA last year starts this year positively, doesn't end, doesn't look to be on track for PA again this year. And you can also sort of see on there that it's saying leaders' actions to identify and tackle barriers to attendance result in high attendance or rapid or notable improvement. So from what we're hearing from Ofsted, whilst they're highlighting above national for strong standard, they're also putting in the caveat alongside that if they can identify rapid or notable improvement, and that interventions are having a demonstrable impact, then they can still say that there is a strong standard for attendance. So there is that caveat that we're hearing, that whilst they're wanting data in there to acknowledge achievement and impact, they do understand that that won't work for all provision on individual cases. Small schools, for example, where one child being off can have a huge impact. So it's having the confidence to sort of acknowledge that and to know that we can demonstrate this. And so having something like our pupil attendance impact case studies, and I've given you an example here on screen and included it in the notebook. So for the children where we do sort of see that we're having to do something different, their attendance, they look vulnerable to low attendance, just stopping and thinking of that child as a case study to identify success and to share these with governors, so that we can show that our strategies that we're taking are supporting impact is a really useful piece of work to do for your attendance lead or safeguarding lead or pupil premium lead or vulnerable child lead, just to be capturing that information in quite a simple format, tick boxy, with an opportunity to put a few notes on there, is just a way of capturing that. So trying to perhaps have those two different things going, your PA tracker and some attendance case studies, showing that impact of the changes and the strategies that have been used by school could be really valuable going forward as evidence. Dawn, anything to share on attendance? Does that all sound okay?
No, it covers all the main areas, and it's obviously that key focus that has been sort of growing by the government, hasn't it, since COVID?
Yeah.
That those numbers have been so low that they're trying to come up with whatever will address that problem.
Yeah, and I know just a little bit from thinking about the case sampling approach. The case sampling approach doesn't just stop at what they see in the classroom. So it may continue to look at attendance and other aspects as well. So having as much evidence around what has happened and the work that leaders are doing, the decisions that have been taken to support the vulnerable children and ensure inclusion, it is really important that we're able to capture and talk about that impact easily. I think is something that's a good sort of way to be thinking going forward.
There are a lot of children that just don't want to attend school, isn't it? And it becomes an issue for them then.
Yes.
If that goes on for a period of time, and you can see that in a lot of the research that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So just finally included a few simple questions for leaders and governors to be asking, when they look at those attendance reports, which, as I say, I would just be sharing with governors as part of the papers that go to the governing bodies, because they're really accessible for all, and everybody could be asking questions similar to these ones based on those reports. Okay, so our final section today is just to have a little focus on the key link governors' roles. We know that this year schools have potentially have their AGMs for governors, or their first planning meeting of the year. Every school has slightly different approaches, and you may be setting out committees, or you may be allocating and agreeing key link governor roles. And what I just wanted to highlight was around thinking about sort of key pillars of link governance, and ensuring that as a school board and a local governing body, that we're quite clear on who has some additional responsibility as a governor for SEND, for safeguarding and health and safety. So whilst we know safeguarding and SEND are actually sort of statutory governor roles, we know that health and safety is highly recommended and is adopted as best practice. It's not actually a legal requirement like the other two, but it is actually part of that best practice. In addition to that, you may have other link governor roles. They're all absolutely what each governing body and each setting decides meets their focus, their school improvement priorities. But just wanted to highlight these three as something to consider. In moving forward with link governors roles, where possible, it's good to have some idea of what we're expecting those roles to cover. So the next 3 slides just highlight some information that's very simple, because we know our governors are volunteers. We struggle, I think, across the sector to recruit local governing body members, particularly we know in our HART members areas and schools, our rural areas can make this more of a challenge, particularly as well. So we've got to make sure that that everything is manageable, but equally, when we're ensuring things are manageable, what I recognise with conversations with governors is they want to know what to do, and actually giving a little bit of structure to that can help it to be more manageable as well. So it may be that you just have a really brief role descriptor for these key roles, so that it's really clear what everybody is expecting that link governor to contribute. And the next 3 slides just highlight some of the ideas that you could have. There's a lot of information out on the National Governance Association around these key roles as well. But what I've just left for you on these slides is really just keeping it simple. And making it clear to the governors what their commitment may be. So having at least 1 visit per year is expected. 3 visits, 1 per term, is preference. But if it is that the governor can only manage to have a face-to-face visit once per year, there are other ways to creatively make sure that there is the engagement, whether it be quick online Teams, or whether it be through sharing of reports and through emails, etc. as well. So I won't talk through all of the 3 slides, but you can see that I've just given you some content for each of those 3 roles. And then, as I said, having some sort of idea driven again by leaders, school leaders, to really highlight and help give some structure to that termly activity, the monitoring, the oversight that those link governor roles may have. And here is just an example of kind of the termly monitoring and assurance that the safeguarding governor may focus on and complete. And important where possible to be able to give a little bit of structure, perhaps in a similar way for the other 2 roles, so that again that manageable but meaningful work can happen, so that that link governor is quite clear on what they will need to report back to the full governing body. So some examples there, things that you'd probably expect, and again included in your notebook. And then it's capturing it. And what's important from that challenge, oversight and assurance point of view is that effective governing body minutes do record each term that the link governor has completed that assurance work, or has reported back to the full governing body. And having a simple format, I know over time everybody will have sort of thought, what do they need to say? You might get a range of different styles of reports in from governors who have different sort of strengths and weaknesses in terms of what they report and what that looks like. So a simple structure around those 3 key roles may help. And I've just provided an example, trying again to keep it manageable, not expecting anybody to write too much. And sometimes it does help if we help to record and minute together for agreement some of these notes. So it's quite useful if the link governor is recognised for perhaps other things that they've looked at or activities that they've supported on sort of since the last full governing body meeting. And that might be in addition to a sort of a simple agenda of an actual face-to-face meeting or Teams meeting that might happen. So good just to capture what was on that agenda and maybe just some really short bullet point notes of that, of what was discussed. Some sort of key actions that we discussed, and there may be activities that the DSL or the Senko are going off to sort of complete. And then the bit that I quite like, I think at the bottom, which is important, is the points to take forward for discussion at the next full board meeting. And this gives something really tangible instead of just giving the narrative of the report, because that link governor has fulfilled their role, has sought assurance, but it's what needs to go back to the full governing board. So just by perhaps highlighting and agreeing some points, those then usefully can be threaded into your governing body minutes, showing that it's not just a narrative discussion of the whole visit. You know, that's not effective and evaluative in that governing body meeting, will take up too much time, but it just gives the headlines, the real evaluation. What is it that the local governing body need to know? Because they may have had, you know, as submitted as part of the papers, will have seen a copy of the report. And it may be that there's something for agreement. An example could be that in safeguarding, you know, there's some concerns around some outdoor fencing that may have repercussions on finance. So that could be a point to take forward to the full board meeting, that we just need to agree that we want to move forward and invest in some new fencing because it's looking like a safeguarding risk at the moment. Just a simple example. It then just highlights that that strong link going back into the governing body minutes. So just a sort of an overview there, just something to think about, and happy to support anybody who might just want to have a further conversation around those roles. Please reach out if that would be helpful. Okay, so finally, just last couple of slides. The first one here is just a reminder of our HART CPD sessions. Please do book online, following the links. Hopefully the links will work from the notebook that you'll be receiving with this recording. If they don't, please know to contact Kay Young at ycatschools.co.uk, and Kerry will book you on and make sure that you get the links to all of the CPD. And as you can hear from today's session, what we're really trying to do is make sure that everything that we're providing you in our CPD is aligned to key priorities so that we can be supporting you on your school improvement journeys and moving forward, for example, with the Ofsted and with the writing framework too. So we hope that these will be really helpful and resourceful sessions that you can take away things and just help you with your next steps wherever you are on your journeys of improvement. And finally, it's just to remember that our next highlight, just to say that our next session is on Thursday, the 6th of November. We're alternating to provide it as the afternoon session. That's our commitment to help support many of our colleagues who we know are teaching in the mornings or are covering classes, etc. So it means that it gives everybody the opportunity to hopefully be able to attend at a time that does really work for them. And hopefully you have the rest of the dates already in your diary, but yeah, that's the key one for the rest of this term. Okay, so thank you everybody very much. Dawn, anything that you'd like to sort of share at the end of the session? Or
just on the governors there, it's about making, sometimes as governors we can forget that the actions are the important things to show that you are fulfilling your role. And and you pointed that out, which I think is an important point. It's not sort of avoiding things. It needs to show, particularly in the world we live in now and how things work, that that things have been looked at, reviewed, and actions have been taken, and where they have been, to show that, because that's a key part of the role increasingly.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I think that's really important, and because it is about lessons learned. It's about that open, transparent, self-improving culture that the school needs to have, so that we're always just continually wanting things to be the best that they can be. So yeah, those reflections and key actions really, really important that they're noted and minuted as well. Okay, thank you very much, Don. Thank you to Elaine and Pauline for today's input. We hope that you found this recording accessible, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, the 6th of November, if not before, at one of our CPD sessions. Okay, thanks, everybody. Okay, all stopped, Don.
They definitely